Now, you were consistently involved with Alice Cooper, but you did not do Muscle of Love. Why?
There was a point at which the band was starting to flex their muscles, meaning the instrumental band within the Alice Cooper group. They wanted more recognition. They wanted more respect. They felt like I was too sort of in charge of that side of things. And I think that there was also some disagreement amongst the different factions about what they were going to do as their next step. Anyway, it was just not comfortable for everybody. And it was clear to me on the first day of rehearsal that some people in the room were not happy to see me. And that happens, in life. Sometimes that happens. By the end of the day, I just realized that this was not going to be a happy experience. And I took Alice aside and said, look, I can't do this. And I called Jack Douglas, who had been working for me and doing some production for me. And I asked my then partner, who used to be my boss, Jack Richardson, I asked him if he and Jack Douglas together would take over the project. I knew between the two of them, there would be a continuity there and a comfort factor for the band. So they said yes, and I think they did a really good job.
Now, the band broke up slightly thereafter. Did you foresee that happening?
Yeah, I sort of did. I did. I didn't have anything to do with it. I didn't talk to anybody about that. But I did say to Shep and to Alice that, if they do decide to go out on their own, that they should call me. I'd be very happy to come back.
So what was the process? Ultimately, Alice Cooper went solo, but he was identified with the name of the band at that point. How did that come together that you went back to work with Alice?
Well, let's be clear about something. When the band formed, it was obvious to Shep, and it was suggested by Pat Kingsley, one of the greatest PR people in the world, that you couldn't have a band called Alice Cooper without having someone in the band called Alice Cooper. So Vincent Fournier got selected. He was the lead singer after all, and he literally changed his name legally and went through all that process to become Alice Cooper. He was also the guy then that spoke on behalf of the band. So at 7 a.m, where everybody else was sleeping off the gig of the night before, he's on the phone with Match Paris or some other, periodical somewhere. He's doing all this spokesman stuff. He's working double duty. So by the time it came to determining where the band was going to go, it was clear that, Alice Cooper going off on his own would be Alice Cooper, and the rest of the band would have to find a different name.
Do you believe there was resentment from the rest of the band that he went on using the name?
I think, maybe at the time there might have been, but nobody could, you can't deny a person the right to work under their own name. That's just common sense. So resentment that he stayed Alice Cooper, I don't think so. There may have been some resentment about, Shep staying with him and me going back and leaving them out there on their own. And I can understand that. Since then, happily, everybody has remained friends, continue to work together. We just did some sessions in Phoenix with the original guys and Alice, and we all talk to each other all the time. Dennis has written songs on Alice's current records and stuff, so all is well.
Okay, so how does the process go down in a more granular fashion in terms of the story that you get back to work with Alice?
It's a very simple one that they have to do a solo project, and Shep has a clause in his contract, in the Alice Cooper contract, that allows them to do a soundtrack album for a different label than Warner Brothers. So they go to a sister label so as to keep peace in the family. They go to Atlantic Records, and then Shep calls me up and says, we're going to do it again. Would you like to work with Alice? And oh, by the way, we need a soundtrack, meaning we have to come up with an idea for a movie or a TV show. So Alice and I got together, and interestingly, so we get together, we start talking about this, and we decided to come up with our own story. So we come up with a storyline where this rock star named Steven something, he and his mistress are in a private plane somewhere over the Rockies, and the plane goes down. He disappears, she disappears. 28 days later, he surfaces alone, and he's fine, and he looks fine. The suggestion, is that something untoward may have happened there during that 28 days. And he comes back, and now he's rock star by day and evening, and by night he's a vampire and a killer. And so that was the idea. Anyway, we came up with this thing, Welcome to My Nightmare, and Shep introduced us to a movie director named Denny Mann, who would have been the director of this project if it had all sort of worked out. Alice and I went to Vancouver, BC, to meet with Denny Mann on a ship off the coast of Vancouver, where he was shooting a movie featuring Ian McShane, Donald Pleasance, and Vincent Price.
Wow.
And Yvette Mimieux, who happened to be my wet dream, right?
Right.
So there we were on shipboard, and I was standing next to Mr. Price. He pulled out a cigar, Monte Cristo, which I was smoking in those days. I loved Monte Cristos, and I just said, look, I know this is very forward, but would you happen to have one more of those? And suddenly we were like cigar buddies, how cigar buddies are. And so we started talking, and I'm listening to that voice, and I just said to him, Mr. Price, how would you like to make your rock and roll debut? And he looked at me like it was some kind of joke, but then he said, sure. So I said, well, we'll stay in touch. And of course, there was no movie. We came up with an idea for a television special for ABC Wide World of Entertainment. This was back when they had ABC Wide World of Sports, the agony of defeat and the ecstasy of victory, or whatever it was, right? And then they decided, well, this is working so well for sports, we're going to do it for entertainment. So they set up this slot, and I believe we were the first ones with this project called Welcome to My Nightmare, which is its own show all by itself. So we should move on from this. But let me just tell you that there has never been a three-ring circus like that whole experience in my entire life. And someday we'll talk all about it.